us talk about raising numbers to different exponents. Raising numbers to different exponents. So what is the definition? Let's go with the definition first. Let n be a positive number. So if I ask you to raise number like b to exponent n, what's the meaning of that? It means that I'm taking b as the base and raise that to exponent n. Okay, well, I have b times b times b times itself n times. So I'm going to repeat this multiplication n times. Now, you're going to work with another case if you raise b to a negative exponent. If b as the base is raised to a negative exponent, you're going to flip this. You're going to write this as 1 divided by b to power n. Then you're going to have 1 divided by b multiplied by itself n times, or another representation is 1 over b to power n, or it's multiplied by itself n times 1 over b times 1 over b times 1 over b times itself n times. N times. Okay, let's make it more interesting. What if I have the following case? Another definition. So this is part A. This is part B. Part C, you might have a fraction of this form. A divided by B to power n. Well, we have a fraction right now. It means that I'm cutting down A over B n times, and I multiply those together. I have A over B times A over B times itself n times. So I'm going to repeat this process n times. And finally, if I raise this to a negative exponent, part D, if I have A over B to power negative n, it's going to be flipped. You're going to flip A over B. It is going to be B divided by A to the positive exponent. Guys, notice the difference between the negative and positive exponent. A over B is raised to negative n. You can flip your fraction. You get B over A to power n. It means that I'm multiplying B over A by itself n times. B over A n times. Here we go. Let's go over a couple of examples. So first example here, suppose I give you 2 raised to the 3rd power, or you can just skip the parentheses and just write it as 2 to the 3rd. 2 to the 3rd, all right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just follow the definition. The definition says, hey, take your base, write it down 3 times. So you have 2 times 2 times 2, which is equal to 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, not that bad. I feel comfortable about this. Give us another example. Okay, let's take a look at this example. Suppose I ask you to raise a 3rd to the 2nd power. I'm using a fraction right now. 1 divided by 3 raised to the 2nd power. What's happening here? My base is b. It's raised to exponent n. I'm going to take my base and multiply it by itself twice, 2 times. I get 1 over 3 times 1 over 3, which is 1 over 9. Remember that. Recall everybody, when we are multiplying fractions, if you have a over b times c over d, it is equal to ac divided by bd. This has happened here. A 3rd times a 3rd is 1 over 9. Very good. Let's take a look at some negative exponents. I'm going to use the exact same examples that I did here, but instead of using positive exponent, I'm going to use a negative exponent. So, for example, suppose I ask you to raise 2 to negative 3. Well, follow the definition. Base is b, 2, and the exponent is negative 3, negative n. I'm going to flip this. I'm going to write it as 1 divided by 2 to the positive exponent. What's the meaning of that? It means that I'm taking a half and raise it to the 3rd power. Remember that, everybody. 1 to the 3rd is 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. Remember that if you raise 1 to any exponent, it's equal to 1 itself. So following the definition, I take this fraction and multiply it by itself 3 times. I get a half times a half times a half, which is 1 times 1 times 1, 1, divided by 2 times 2, 4, 4 times 2, 8. 1 over 8. Very good. What if I have a fraction of this form? A over b raised to some exponents. Suppose I have, for example, 2 over 5, and I'm raising that to exponent 2. A over b is 2/5 raised to some exponents like 2. So following the definition, it takes whatever is your base, no matter. A over b, copy this down and multiply it by itself 2 times. So what is a over b? A over b is just 2/5. 2/5 times 2/5. 2 times 2 is 4, divided by 5 times 5, 25. A over b times c over d is ac divided by bd. Very good. Now, what if I raise this to a negative exponent? Take a look at this example. I have 2/5 raised to -2. Then you have a negative exponent. You're going to take your fraction and flip it. You get 5/2 raised to the positive exponent. Well, now that you have your fraction to the positive exponent, you're going to multiply it by itself 2 times. 5 times 5, 25, divided by 2 times 2, 4.